All right, today's video is on planar structure. So not unlike cross contour, planar structure looks for the interior structure of something. And again, most people draw with an outline, no shame on outlines, but what we're looking for with planar structure is what's going on between the outlines, just like we were doing with cross contour. So for planar structure, we're going to keep our lines straight, and planar structure is all about how the geometry of the planes connect and facet together. Let's look at a couple objects here. I have a box, okay? Now this box has different planar shapes that fit together in a very specific way. There's a top, there's a bottom, there's sides. Now if I took a laser and I cut out each one of these sides and I stacked all of those pieces together, it would be largely flat. It's only by assembling the shapes in just the right way that planar structure is created. And before we take this any further, let's just take a quick sidestep over here to the table so we can kind of set up for success. So let's take that idea of the box that we were just talking about. So our line of sight is going through here, and we're just seeing one side of that box. This square does not create a sense of any kind of three-dimensional illusion on our paper. Now let's imagine we rotate the box a little bit. So we have the long side and we also have the square side. Now going back, foreshortened slightly in space. My line of sight is still through here. Now I have two sides. This starts to get me a little bit closer to something that has a three-dimensional illusion on my paper. However, if I tilt this box down a little bit more, let's keep my line of sight here and I'll just tilt this down. So I wanted to just notice flat, a little more dimensional, and then now we're really starting to get to that depth illusion. It's only when we put these different parts together in the right way. So notice each of these corners fits together with another corner. That's something that's going to be important for planar structure. Everything has to facet together in the right way. And notice also, if I take these same shapes and I kind of explode them, they are no longer connected in the right way, in the proper arrangement. They're no longer touching. They're just left as fragmented, isolated units. I also do not create that spatial illusion on my paper. It's only when we have them all fit together that we start to create planar structure. And so let's talk about a cylinder real fast. The easiest way for me to talk to students about planar structure that I've found is to talk about which planar shapes are facing me and which are facing away from me. So in this case, I have a planar shape facing me. I'm going to keep these as straight lines. I'm going to overpower my curved lines there. And then I have some planar shapes facing away from me. So there's overlap with cross contour with this, but notice the main difference here is we don't have any of that free-flowing organic quality. We have very rigid boundaries. Let's take a look at one more form that we've looked at before, this idea of an egg. So each of these breaks is a simplification of how my hand is moving or how these planes are moving in space. I like to think of it as placing my hand on it. It makes it a little bit more tangible. And I'm really emphasizing these boundaries just to make it clear for this demonstration. The better you get with planar structure and the more naturalistic you get with planar structure, the more you can lighten these divisions. They don't have to be so hammered into place. So one last thing before we move over to the easel is an important idea, which is this idea in geometry of something called a chiliagon. A chiliagon is a 1,000-sided figure. So it looks like, in its regular form, it just looks like a circle or an ellipse. However, if you were to zoom in to the chiliagon, you would see straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. You would see all of these little tiny straight lines, but you would have 1,000 of them. The idea is that even though it's made up of all of these little straight line increments, the overall effect is this perfectly smooth, organic form. And so if you were to push all of this planar structure breakdown to its fullest extent, you would end in this kind of territory where the overall look of what you're drawing is incredibly organic. But it is still composed of all of these tiny little straight line increments. Let's jump over to the easel. I'll continue the demonstration using this little cold brew coffee bottle, and we'll take it from there. I'm going to break this into straight lines and angles, and I'm going to ask myself how much is facing me and how much is facing away from me. I would end up with something like this. Now I'm going to shade this, and I'm going to skip that one, and I'm going to shade this one. I'm doing that just to differentiate the shapes, but you can see also in doing that, I'm already creating a sense of light and shade, and it might be different from the light and shade in this room, but it's already giving me a three-dimensional illusion on my paper. What this represents is my hand flat on the front of the bottle, this way, goes up the neck a little bit, and then is flat on the top. Now that's facing me. I also have areas that are facing away from me, but if I'm simplifying this, let's just stick with one plane going away from me. I have to get all these corners to meet the right way, so I have to make sure nothing's kind of left hanging here. When I held the bottle up originally, I could see a little bit of the top, so I'm going to talk about that as well here. Okay. So here is the bottle as seen in a very quick planar structure analysis. I'm going to do a little bit of a diagonal line here to indicate that there's a direction to these planes in the same way that we did with cross contour. I'm going to just copy this one over here. Okay, so we had three divisions originally that related to my hand in these different positions moving around the bottle. So we can just do the same thing, but we could add a little bit more of those divisions, and instantly it will become more organic. So here's my bottle divided a bit more. So instead of one planar shape in the middle and then one off to each side, I now have one in the middle, and then I have 1, 2, 3 off to each side. So I think what you can see from this is that planar shape is an amazing way to create a three-dimensional illusion on your paper. The trick is every one of these corners has to touch one another. You can't have anything kind of hanging off in some kind of way that doesn't make sense. Let's do a couple shapes from imagination to kind of show this. Sometimes I'll ask students to draw a cookie or a muffin from imagination. So when students usually do that, they'll do something that looks like this. A muffin, there's a muffin top, and then they'll put some, sprinkles or texture or something like that. With planar structure, we can, again, just like the bottle, we could break that down into asking ourselves, what's the front of the muffin? So all of a sudden, I'm taking this thing, which otherwise was very kind of simple, and I'm starting to, again, add this three-dimensional structure. So here it is lit from below, like that, hitting that rim all around the outside. So all of a sudden we could do a lot. The point is, we could do a lot once we understand the planar structure. Muffins, bottles, fantastic. But can we actually take this and do something a little more interesting with it? So let's take everyone's favorite, hard to draw thing, a human face, okay? So let's take this face and infuse it with planar structure. So I'm going to show you a secret line. This is a planar structure tutorial, but I'm going to show you, we're going to do a little 2-for-1 here. You're going to get a figure drawing tip. There's a line that divides the side of the face from the front of the face. So everyone's going to have slightly different angles with this, but it's going to be something like this. It goes down the forehead, around the eye socket, back to the cheekbone, and then it cuts down from there to the chin. So this line, this lightning bolt line, is super key. Please memorize it if you're interested in drawing the figure. Separates the side of the face from the front of the face. Okay, that line also is obviously out here. You might be someone with a very broad face, so your cheekbones might be in a different area, or you might be someone with a very small forehead, unlike mine. So while the proportions might vary, the basic underlying structure does not. Side of face, front of face. This division is the most important division. If you can do this, you can draw a human face, because we're going to go from here, we're going to cut over, we're going to kind of lead ourselves into the bridge of the nose. That nose is going to have a side to it as well. So I can't leave any of these corners hanging out by itself. If you have a corner, that corner needs to connect to something else. So in doing so, in holding yourself accountable for every single corner needing to connect somewhere else, you actually have a kind of restriction on what you're doing that holds you to a certain type of fidelity to the planar structure. If we're working with this eye real quick here, taking the curve of the upper and lower eyelid here, and I'm breaking them into 3 different parts. But we can cut that with straight lines, boom, 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 and we could deal with those in terms of planar structure as well. And there's a little shape underneath here that fits together like that, and then starts to spill outwards this way towards the chin, which then connects down here. Planar structure can teach you how to look for more and more and more structure in your drawings. It's a little more rigid, but the rigidity is actually what teaches you how to look for this structural information. And even when you think it's not there, if there's one of these kind of corners left hanging out by itself, like I was saying before, we can examine that. I notice there's one here and here. We can examine what's going on in that area. There's probably more information there than you've maybe noticed. So planar structures is one of those things it really gives you something to hold on to when you're drawing. And if you're even to do something like a loop-de-loop like that, I could take that loop-de-loop and I could then look for which part of that's facing me. Which part of that is turning in on itself. This is just a quick example to show you how you could take something that's very, very fluid and you could break it down in terms of planar structure to help you understand what's happening and create that very three-dimensional spatial illusion on your paper. So that is planar structure. I hope you can put it to use for your drawings, both from life and from imagination. And maybe especially if you're someone who draws from imagination and your drawings have kind of lacked a three-dimensional quality that you're seeking, try planar structure out. It's really got a lot of, it's one of my favorite techniques to teach, and it's one of the techniques that I think even if you're not using it in your drawing, you have to kind of hold it in your mind so you understand why the structure of something looks the way that it does. Even if you're making a value-based drawing, you kind of have to understand the planar structure to understand how the light is breaking on a given form. So anyways, give it a shot, see how it goes. Thanks for watching.